Hello and welcome to StarCast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer, coming to you from Kingston, New York, a little bit past noon on Thursday, the 15th of August. This is the edition of StarCast that is designed to accompany the weekly horoscope for August 15th. Those are my extended readings. I've also got an article above the horoscope describing some of the astrology, which I'll also go over again in this discussion. And today's photos are from Vinny's farm stand in Saugerties, New York. That's often been a crowd favorite here at Planet Waves, the very photogenic 50-year-old farm stand on the outer outskirts of Ulster County, New York, right at the very edge of the Catskill Mountains. All right, so before I get into the chart, which is the chart is for the full moon, that takes place August 19th. That's Monday, 2:25 p.m. I want to talk a little bit about the world environment right now, the global situation right now. Normally, I don't bring news items into StarCast unless it's a news-oriented StarCast, so that's not really true. But this particular content stream generally focuses on the astrology and not the whole shit show going on in the world. But this is worth mentioning. First of all, yesterday on the Planet Waves FM side of the company, I released a 1-hour interview with a MD, PhD, doctorate, and doctor named Christian Fiala in Austria. And he has spent an hour commenting on a document release in Germany from the equivalent of the German CDC. It's called the Robert Koch Institute. And someone who's a former employee of the Robert Koch Institute released to investigative reporter Aya Velasquez 4,000 pages or so of internal documents which prove that in Germany, which led all of Europe and in many ways much of the world on the whole coronavirus lockdown mitigation measures, forced vaccines and all this stuff, that the whole thing was politically motivated and that the scientists were actually shut out of the discussion. The people with the scientific knowledge were shut out of the situation. There are internal emails and meeting notes showing that this committee, the Robert Koch Institute committee, intentionally lied to the German population to terrorize the German population. And basically, the people who are calling bullshit on all of this in 2020 have been fully vindicated by this, and it is extremely likely that what went on in Germany went on in the United States, since they had nothing to go on in Germany, and they had nothing to go on in the United States. Now, the reason I'm saying this, first of all, it is a big development in this pandemic story, which I have devoted myself to for 4.5 years. Even when I say I'm not working on it, I still am. And clearly that's the case right now. But the pandemic spin machine is spinning out of control right now. The people who are pushing these narratives are making up all kinds of new stories. For example, monkeypox was declared Mpox, they call it, because monkeypox is too cute. They call it Mpox now. That was declared a global pandemic this week, even though 95% of the cases are in one little region of Africa where everybody is poisoned by mining. And this is about skin pustules. Skin pustules, anyone knows skin pustules are about toxicity being pushed out of the body through the skin. But no, Tedros and his phony pandemic committee at the World Health Organization have declared yet another global health emergency of international concern, aka a global pandemic for Mpox. Now, I read furthermore on page 1 of the New York Times that cases of COVID are going through the roof, and SARS-CoV-2 can be found in sewage samples. Okay, so this is more PCR bullshit. You can run any sample through the PCR practically and get a get SARS-CoV-2 positive. That's the pawpaw fruit and the motor oil and the goat that all tested positive for SARS-CoV-2. This PCR analytical tool, the thing where they shove the thing up your nose, doesn't test for anything. And we go over this in my interview with Christian Fiala, which I will place a link to at the very top of the astrology publication today. And what they're doing is they're testing sewage, and this is completely ridiculous. There's bazillions of genetic sequences in sewage, and the genetic sequence they're looking for has never once ever been shown to come from a virus, match a virus, be infectious, or cause disease. And we know from the work of Christine Massey, who carries a Planet Waves FM press card, that 224 governments, institutions, and various different things, state governments, CDC, and the EPA, all these organizations that are supposed to have this information cannot produce a paper from anywhere in the world showing that they can produce a sample of this thing they say is all over the planet, SARS-CoV-2. So, I mean, I'm going on about this to warn you that this is not a real problem. This is completely politically manipulated. And if you listen to the interview with Dr. Fiala, you'll hear the extent to which it's politically motivated. So what I'm saying this to ease your mind and not think you're going to catch a disease by getting on an airplane, going to a museum, going to the grocery store. This is completely ridiculous. And if you're interested in people doing the very, very best work on issues related to these medical scandals, there are two, and I will link to them in the same paragraph. Doctors Mark and Sam Bailey. Mark is my technical advisor. I'm an investigative reporter, but I use technical advisors in the world, and Mark is my final read. Did I get that right? And also Mike Stone at virolig.com. Mike, too, is one of my final reads. Did I get that right? So these are people that I look up to and respect tremendously, and I will send you their way. Okay, now that I've gone on for 7 minutes about this, let's set the clock back to the beginning of this podcast. Shall I play the theme music again? Okay, here you go. Welcome to StarCast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer. Today's edition is for the 15th of August 2024, covering the horoscope, an article that you have right at your fingertips, as well as the horoscope column. So we are approaching the full moon during Mercury retrograde. And in every Mercury retrograde, there is a moment when Mercury actually exactly passes right between the Earth and the Sun. That's what Mercury retrograde is. Mercury's orbit is 3 times faster than that of the Earth, which means that 3 times a year, Mercury will pass between the Earth and the Sun. It's therefore close to the Earth. Therefore, we experience Mercury retrograde. And so at each one of these things, right in the middle, right in the dead center, Mercury makes what's called the interior conjunction to the Sun. Previously in astrology, that was called the inferior conjunction. But my old friend Melanie Reinhardt and I took a vote one day and unanimously decided to change the inferior conjunction, because there's nothing inferior about it, to the interior conjunction. And that's what we have on Sunday, the 18th. And then the full moon happens on Monday, the 19th. And at the moment of the full moon, the Sun is conjunct Mercury and the asteroid Vesta, one of the patron saints of Planet Waves, the holder of space, let's say the quality of attention and respect that places sexuality in a sanctified, respectful, ritualistic format, and also is a kind of a patron of young women, and also is about tending the sacred flame 24/7 in perpetuity. That sacred flame is the flame of human creativity and sexuality. All of this is lit up by the moon opposite the Sun, and that takes place at 2:25 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday afternoon. And so if you want to watch the full moon rise in the east, rise in the east. And actually, this will be a good night to do it. That'll be Sunday night to check that out. Hopefully, we have some clear weather. I've been wanting to get this shot for a long time. That was from the same cliff where I took the photo for Somewhere in Between, a photo of sunrise. But I've got to just figure out when the moon rises and be there for that. Okay, there's probably I've got to figure this out. It gets wonky to figure. This is how people think the Earth is flat. They don't want to figure anything out. All right, so we have this moon opposite Sun, Mercury, Vesta event. That's on the 19th. We're halfway done with Mercury retrograde. So the full moon pattern I have drawn in purple. You can see it. It's I've shaded it in. It's in the chart. We've got a purple circle around the Vesta and the Sun and Mercury, and the purple lines going to the moon. That's one of the three major aspect patterns in this chart. The second one I'll only touch on briefly because I've been talking about it a lot, is the alignment from Capricorn, this group of minor planets in Capricorn. 5 of them, Pholus, Quaoar, Ixion, Ceres, and Cupido, all kind of packed into early Capricorn, making a 90-degree angle to the lunar nodes. I'm calling this the Hunger Games aspect, and right now it is as close as it's going to get with Ceres, the goddess Earth Mother, retrograde conjunct Pholus. Pholus is the homeopathic centaur, small cause, big effect. Releasing the pressure from the pressurized vessel, etc., lined up with all these things. You can see that is drawn in blue with a red bar on the lower left next to Pholus and Ceres and Ixion and all of those guys. And I've linked to the article, The Family Hunger Games, and have said since June, basically kind of calling the tone of the summer, and I think you will see the connections here. But what essentially we get in this Family Hunger Games aspect is that the dramas of individual people's lives, people's individual private dramas, are projected onto the world, and so the world ends up being like one endless, ginormous family drama. But what's actually going on is very few people have actually done their work on their family of origin issues. Who has time to go to therapy for 5 years, and who has a therapist who's good enough to help you sort that out? Some people are lucky. Some people have had the experience of a really good therapist, but it is becoming quite rare. And because of the litigious nature of society right now, therapists are afraid to be honest with people. So, that's why people go to astrologers. All right, so that's this T-square. Now, there's another T-square. I want to spend most of the time in this discussion on this. So the Pholus lunar nodes one is highlighted in blue, and that, despite the fact that the blue lines are of a different length, that is a perfect T-square. Again, you can read about that in the Family Hunger Games, linked from this page. All right. The aspect I want to focus on is in orange. It is another T-square. T-square meaning 3 sides of a grand square. And the heart of the matter of this T-square is the square of Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces. This is the Jupiter-Saturn square. It's exact once every 10 years. It can last a while. This one is exact for the first time in the next couple of days, and it's been hanging out all year, and then it's going to be exact 3 times. The third time is going to be in June of 2025. So this is a prolonged aspect, and it is coming with more of the sense of desperation and, oh my God, this is the last chance. The world is going to end. It's all going to collapse. We're all going to die. There's pandemics breaking out all over the world. How could everything be so messed up? Well, a lot of different astrology is pointing to that, and largely that is all a property of the digital age, as is especially all of this pandemic hype is pure digital bullshit. But There is a gravitas added by having the two largest planets in a 90-degree angle. And again, that's Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces, and they are very close. That aspect is exact for the first time just a few hours after the full moon, so they are one and the same thing. This full moon on Monday carries a lot of momentum, and we are in that momentum right now. These things don't just happen the day that they happen, especially in the days leading up to something. There is a buildup, and people are stressed right now, and there are many who just cannot manage their time, cannot manage their workflow, cannot manage their relationships, can't manage their voicemail and their email and their Twitter and their all these different inputs people have. And there's a tremendous amount of digital burnout going on, and that's for the people on the buttery side of the bread. There are a lot of people really struggling, and they ain't on the buttery side of the bread right now, and they may not know where their next grocery shopping money is going to come from, or where their next rent payment is going to come from. And this is this whole Hunger Games thing. Nobody needs the kind of inflation rate that we have right now, but it's being intentionally created by printing billions of dollars in fake money and sending it to Ukraine. So Jupiter-Saturn square came to a peak on Wednesday. If there was something special, Wednesday's the sense of what it was like Wednesday afternoon into overnight, with a little bit of energy there, a little extra zing there. That was Mars forming a conjunction to Jupiter. That was exact yesterday, and forming a square to Saturn. So what happens with any slow-moving aspect pattern is that every now and then, sometimes quite often, but at least every now and then, one or more of the closer, smaller planets sweeps through the pattern and brings it really, really close. Jupiter is something we can feel, but it's not that close. Saturn, something we can certainly feel, but it's not that close. But when Mars comes through, Mars is our next door neighbor. Mars represents heat and drive and desire and passion, and a certain kind of desire for sex, a certain kind of assertiveness and expressing of intention, and that hotted up, as they say in England, Jupiter, and formed a tense 90-degree angle to Saturn, and there was probably some form of a release point from that. So that's nice. It's nice to get that behind us. And notably, this is very close to a deep space point called the Great Attractor, which I talked about probably for too long last week. All right, also in the mix at the time of the full moon is Venus opposite Saturn. Now, it's passed by 1 degree, but still, it's right in there. Venus is opposite Saturn the day of the full moon. It's also square Jupiter the day of the full moon, and we're going to have Venus square Mars. And also, the minor planet Centaur planet Nessus is right in the mix. So if you follow the orange lines in the full moon chart, it looks like some kind of right triangle extending to the right side of the chart. That is a perfect T-square, even though it doesn't look like it. It's just a quirk of how the chart displays itself in the different seasons. We have a T-square involving Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Nessus. That is very interesting. And what that is about is the consequences of sexual thought and sexual actions, the results of the choices that we make. And there is a lot of tension in the realm of, let's say, male-female relationships. Instagram is being flooded with all of this propaganda about how men are such terrible people and don't do anything, and women have to do the physical labor and clean the toilet and the emotional labor and the intellectual labor and the mental labor, and men don't do anything. Men just sit around on their ass all day, and women are doing everything. We've got to march in the streets to protest the things that our husbands and boyfriends are allegedly not doing, et cetera, et cetera. It just goes on and on. This is just simply nothing more than stoking division. Listen, if you've got an issue with your husband or your boyfriend or your wife or your girlfriend, work it out. That's got nothing to do with activism. That's got nothing to do with marching in the streets or Instagram posts. And I think everyone, before they raise an issue about what's going on with someone else, maybe they want to check their own privilege a little bit and ask yourself, if you think you have certain privileges over another human being, how did you get those privileges? Did they promise them? Did they sign a contract? Or is this merely about expectations? And the reason I bring this up is because Venus square Mars, which is happening, Venus in Virgo, Mars in Gemini, is a notoriously tense aspect when it comes to relationships between men and women, and when it comes especially to sexual relationships between men and women. And it is given to all kinds of darkness and obsession with power and with sex being used as something other than kind of a vehicle for pleasure and creativity and sharing and maybe reproduction. It emphasizes the power aspect of sex. Now, while I'm promising things left, right, and center, I did promise in the first part of the podcast, I promised connections to the Baileys, Stone, and my interview yesterday. And then, from a couple of years ago, I've got a fantastic article on Venus square Mars. So I'm going to write that as fantastic. I'm making fun of the South Park episode where Mrs. Crabtree becomes a comedian. She's the psycho bus driver in the first couple of seasons. Fantastic. Fantastic Venus square Mars article. This is one worth knowing. If you've got Venus square Mars in your chart, definitely saying that you need to figure that out and do some work and see how that has manifested. Now, this is a complicated Venus square Mars, given to all kinds of exaggeration. First of all, Mars is in Gemini. There's going to be a few different sides of the story. Jupiter's in Gemini. There's going to be a few more different sides of the story. Then we've got Venus squaring that, and that's the thing provoking the power drama, the power trip. Then Venus is opposite Saturn. That is calling for some sense of personal accountability and restriction, as is Venus opposite Nessus. Nessus is all about the buck stopping with you. Nessus is all about acknowledging, admitting, and dealing with the consequences of the life that you're living. And usually the fear and the thought of the consequences is much worse than the consequences themselves. The consequences are almost always about the status of an interpersonal relationship, and the question is, with this whole setup, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Nessus, what is the situation with trust? And in honor of this, I've got another installment in the Trust Yourself series of follow-up audios to go with the spring reading. I might as well link to the newest one of those too, that I did last Friday. Trust Yourself audio. Those are going out free on every channel to help promote the Trust Yourself readings. Let's this week talk about trust in relationships and the nature of concealing, withholding, intentionally deceiving people. Does your partner know your entire sexual history? I think everyone's partner should know. Partners should know their entire sexual history. Plain and simple. Nothing left out. If there's something left out, then there's a need to analyze why that thing is left out. And what tends to be left out are accurate descriptions of sexual injuries incurred in the past. And so if you're trying to have a sexual relationship with someone, whether you're a man or a woman, and you've experienced some form of sexual transgression in your past, and you're not talking about it, and it's affecting you in some way, and there are things that you can't quite get access to or feel, or that you get to that point and then you can't go any further. We'll have the conversation. By the way, any obstruction of orgasm, like anyone who can't experience orgasm, that goes to one question: what are you not saying? Chances are, if there's something you're not saying and you say that thing, you're going to free up your sexual energy, because as William Pennell Rock wrote in Jealousy and the Abyss, and this line is often credited to me, only truth is erotic. I will link to Jealousy and the Abyss. There's going to be a paragraph right at the top of this Substack. We'll put it right at the top of the Planet Waves versions as well, linking to all of these resources. Nothing fancy, just links that get you to the right place. So Venus square Mars and Jupiter. So beware of exaggeration. And this is all going on at the time of the full moon. One thing I would suggest is, if there's some kind of a hot and heavy conversation that you think you have to have, give it till next week. Give it till like Wednesday or Tuesday. Let all this tension pass. Now, if you are on good and open terms with someone, and there's certainly a lot of sparky tension here to play with, and you might find that these aspects bring out different facets of who you are. I will say that the Sun and Vesta in a conjunction is emphasizing the intentional and ritually focused expression of sexuality rather than the playful expression of sexuality. And all of these aspects will highlight an opportunity to have real discussions. If you can keep it low key and you can move away from blaming someone who is in the room for how you feel, you may be able to have some of the most important conversations of your life. But be cool about this. Relationships cannot be lived on the basis of resentment. Resentment and guilt are pretty much the same thing. And relationships, loving relationships are based on love. And if the basis of your feelings towards someone is guilt and or resentment, or the basis of someone's feelings to you is guilt and or resentment, that's not a relationship that is based on love. And so I think we can afford to back down on this infinite license to be resentful that we seem to have issued here in the 21st century, where there's no complaint too petty to shut down the conversation or to shut down the evening. We've got to take it easier on one another. And if you want your partner to be truthful to you, you have to be willing to hear the truth. Otherwise, what's their incentive to be truthful toward you? Why bother opening up if it turns out that you are not interested? And if your partner's not interested, ask them, well, you want me to be open and honest? Let's have a real conversation. Grant one another amnesty and have the conversation that you need to have. Perhaps easier said than done, but you can find your way there. All right, that's what I have to say to you. Planet Waves FM, the main program is still on hiatus. I'm not sure till when. I'm not fully ready to engage that level of creativity right away, but I've got a new plan for the program. I'm gathering materials. This is a program that is going to be pretty much entirely in-house created music, as opposed to other artists, and much more strongly emphasizing of the interior Vestal qualities of life, that inner space quality that is the other side of planet waves. We're not just good at mundane astrology and doing the charts of 9/11 mass shootings and assassinations and the moon landing. There's the whole inner sphere that I absolutely love to work on. And, don't worry, you can take the kid out of journalism, but you can't take the journalism out of the kid. So I will have more for you there. But Planet Waves FM, I'm looking for that to be a space where I can create what I want to create without the obligation to cover something within the confines of that particular program. So that's my plan. Look for our marketing propaganda. Thank you for subscribing. This project is an elaborate astrology project. I mean, really, if you know of a better astrology project, please tell me. I try to give you a full banquet of personal and worldly astrology pretty much every week. And I'm very happy that I'm experiencing a new surge in popularity, and we've got the websites in order, and we're doing our best to provide the best possible service to you. I remain available almost at all times, efc@planetwaves.net. Tell me who you are. If I don't reply in a couple of hours, send the email again. I just missed it. I do not ignore emails. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. And please stay in touch. Lots of love, and bye for now.